1884, Berlin, Germany. Men in dark suits, cigars in hand, their assistants fidgeting with papers and rulers, were converging for an urgent meeting. A decision had to be made, and it had to be made fast. Europe was on the verge of war. Time was closing in on everyone in that room. Their task was to find a solution that could keep the peace and prevent Europe from collapsing into a conflict. From November of 1884 to February of 1885, these men, their cigars burning low, their assistants shuffling anxiously through papers, would keep returning to these chambers, searching for a way forward. But what had led to this rush, this urgency, this convergency? To understand that, we must go back to the years preceding 1884. The face of an entire continent was about to change. Africa, long ago, long before the men gathered in that Berlin meeting hall, long before even their great-grandparents, Africa had been discovered by Europe. But for a long time, it had been just that, a discovery of a vague, vast southern landmass known mostly through ancient reports and undefined coastal contacts. Very little was known about its interior, and for long it remained a mystery few were willing to pour our resources into and explore. To Europeans, Africa appeared not as a map of nations, but as a distant landmass on the edge of old charts, a land full of mystery spoken by traders, sailors, and ancient geographers. To them, its interior was a blank space, a place they marked with symbols and guesses. They referred to it as terra incognita, or unknown land, when translated from Latin to English. This only began to change in the mid-1400s. In 1488, Bartholomew Diaz, a Portuguese explorer and nobleman, rounded the Cape of Good Hope while searching for a sea route to India and the riches of the East. His voyage revealed not only a passage to Asia, but also the immense mineral wealth lining Africa's coasts: gold, ivory, and many other resources. The discovery threw Europe into a frenzy, igniting fierce competition to establish coastal posts. The Portuguese moved fast. In 1482, they built São Jorge da Mina, and also known as Elmina on the Gold Coast, followed by forts along Angola and Mozambique in the early 1500s. The Dutch followed in the early 1600s, capturing Elmina from the Portuguese in 1637 and establishing power along the Gold Coast. Soon after, the British arrived, founding and capturing posts such as Cape Castle in 1664 and anchoring themselves in Sierra Leone by the late 1700s. The French, not to be outpaced, established their foothold along the Senegal River in 1650s and built trading stations across St. Louis and Gorée Island. And yet, even then, for centuries, their presence and influence remained coastal-based. Despite the forts they built, and despite the ships they anchored offshore, all the while they traded for gold and ivory, spices, and most tragically, for human beings, a long Atlantic slave trade that pulled millions of Africans into its machinery of suffering. Their power stopped where the shoreline ended. And beyond, in the vast tropical forest, in the dunes of the Sahara, and in the lush green savannas lay another Africa, an Africa of its own making, unexplored, untouched by European medieval glory. To the Europeans, interior Africa was remote, wild, unclimbed, and dangerous. But in reality, it was a tapestry of kingdoms, empires, and societies stretching across the interior surface. The Ashanti in the west, the Swahili city-states along the east, Ethiopia in the Horn, great states and kingdoms spread across Central and Southern Africa. These were nations with systems of rule, religion, diplomacy, and trade. They rose and fell on their own timelines, shaping their destinies long before the European interference. For almost 400 years, Europe and Africa only met at the vast ocean's edge. And even in the mid-1800s, the heart of Africa remained unseen, unexplored by European eyes. Africa's map still showed a vast blank space. But the world was changing. Africa's interior was about to draw the gaze of foreign empires. 1760 to 1840, the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, beginning around 1760, swept across Europe like a whirlwind. Factories rose, steam engines roared, cities swelled with workers and industries devoured resources like never before. The demand was incessant: oils, fibers, metals. The question, where will we find more, haunted every manufacturer. Europe began looking outward with a new hunger. Africa's interior could be an answer. The desire to explore Africa for resources had awakened, but access had not. The primary barrier for centuries had been the deadly malaria. For those that attempted to travel inland, journeys often ended with a fever or death. Malaria seemed to form an impenetrable ring around Africa. But in the early 1800s, something remarkable happened. French chemists Pierre Joseph and Joseph Binem isolated and standardized quinine. This breakthrough dismantled the deadliest barrier to European exploration of Africa. A centuries-old wall fell overnight. The race for Southeast prize had begun. The standardization of quinine came just in time. A new obsession was gripping Europe: the race to map the world. In the early 1800s, geographical societies in London, Paris, and Berlin competed fiercely. Africa was still a question, a blank space that needed to be filled. Who could do it first? It became the ultimate frontier. Expeditions were sponsored, rewards were promised to those willing to venture beyond Africa's coastal posts. Then came the Christian zeal. At the center of it were the restless missionaries with a mission to take God's gospel even to the remotest areas. With quinine, they were unstoppable. Beginning in 1830s and early 1840s, missionaries pushed beyond the coastal posts into the interior, creating footholds in territories untouched by European structures. Among them was a figure whose influence would reshape European imagination of Africa. His name was David Livingstone. From the 1840s to the 1870s, Livingstone walked river valleys, crossed highlands, and traced lakes while sending letters home. His letters were not laments of homesickness. They were filled with wonder. They described beautiful landscapes, hospitable communities, and extensive trade networks. The reports captivated Europe. Africa was no longer distant. It became vivid, reachable, almost familiar. Curiosity matured into a longing. Missionary expeditions and their reports fueled Europeans' imagination, and the early obsession to explore and map the world erupted into an age of geographic discovery in the mid-1800s. Explorers such as Burton, Speke, and Baker raced to solve the great geographic mysteries of their time. Where did the Nile begin? How vast was the Great Lakes? How did Africa's river system connect? Each answer would fill a blank space on the map. Explorers rushed into the interior of Africa, and in the 1870s, Henry Morton Stanley intensified everything. He trekked through Central Africa's vast river basins, mapping territories no European had recorded. He began publishing serialized reports about Africa's geographical features, which electrified the European public. Africa had become a prize. Meanwhile, Europe's wave of industrialization surged and grew exponentially. Through the 1870s and beyond, demand for materials skyrocketed. Rubber for industries, copper for wiring, palm oil for machinery. It was not only the demand for materials. Banks, investors, and industrialists pressed their governments. They needed new markets. Africa's newly revealed interior became the answer. Then Europe itself erupted. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871 left Germany unified and hungry for prestige and glory. France, humiliated, sought to recover its honor. Colonies in the newly revealed interior of Africa presented a new form of glory. Even the smaller empires could not afford to be left out. In that atmosphere, King Leopold II of Belgium made his move in the mid-1870s. He disguised his imperial ambitions behind scientific and humanitarian causes. He commissioned Stanley and sent him back into the Congo basin. On Leopold's behalf, Stanley signed hundreds of treaties with local leaders. When Europe learned that what he had done, panic followed. If tiny Belgium could climb vast territory, any European nation could. In 1882, Britain made a decisive move. It occupied Egypt to secure the Suez Canal. This action undermines France's long-standing influence in Egypt. France felt publicly humiliated and had to act to save face. It waged an aggressive campaign, pushing inland from Senegal, securing Guinea, Côte d'Ivoire, Dahomey, and the interior regions that would soon form French Sudan. It was a race, and Germany refused to be left out. In 1884, it declared protectorates over Togo, Cameroon, and Southwest Africa. The moment Germany entered openly, the stakes changed. The scramble was on. The more colonies one secured, the more powerful they appeared. European powers charged inland, each determined to seize territory before its rivals could. Decades of scientific, economic, and political pressure burst into a single desperate race. Europe was set on a collision course. By 1884, Europe was standing on the edge of crisis. The rush for African territories had escalated into frantic rivalry. Germany had entered the race with such a sudden force. France was scrambling to regain its pride after humiliation in Egypt. Britain was claiming strategic zones, and smaller powers tried to seize whatever was left. The continent of Africa, vast, diverse, and sovereign, was slowly becoming a center stage for a European collision. Tension grew with every territory being claimed by a European nation. Flags and treaties flooded African societies, and brave expeditions were crossing paths deep in the interior. There was fear that without clear rules, European powers would eventually turn their guns on each other over these African territories. It was this fear that would decide the arrangement of interior Africa. So in the cold month of November 1884, Germany's Chancellor Otto von Bismarck invited Europe's leading powers to Berlin. His goal was to stop a European collision over African territories. 14 nations accepted the invitation, and no African dignitaries were included. As diplomats and statesmen gathered in the Bismarck's palace in Berlin, Germany, they were introduced to towering maps of Africa. The task was to define the rules for claiming African territories. First on the agenda was the Congo Basin question. Portugal had attempted to assert its old coastal treaties, hoping to snatch the vast basin from Leopold II of Belgium. However, Britain blocked them. During the conference, Belgium's King Leopold II, through skill, manipulation, and relentless diplomacy, secured recognition for what he called the Congo Free State. In reality, Europe handed him a territory the size of Western Europe as a personal property. Then came the decisions that would reshape the interior of Africa forever. After several back and forth discussions, the conference declared that any European claim on African soil would only be respected if the nation could prove what they called effective occupation, which would comprise of a presence on ground and an administration, a treaty, or force. Claims made on paper were no longer sufficient. A country had to show. Next came the rule of notification. Every European power had to inform the others when they occupied a territory. It was an attempt to prevent conflict in what was clearly a scramble for African territories. These decisions were formalized in what became known as the General Act of the Berlin Conference, a document that legally sanctioned Europe's partitioning of Africa. The Congo and Niger rivers were declared open for international trade. As the conference neared the end in February 1885, boundaries began to emerge on the African map. Straight lines, perfect curves, drawn with rulers and pains. These lines cut across kingdoms, ethnic groups, cultures, and trade routes. No one in the room knew nor cared for criteria to avoid dividing people of the same tribe, culture, or kingdom. The moment the Berlin rules were agreed upon and conference ended, what followed was a continental rush. European powers raced to occupy the territories they had claimed. Officials hurried to sign treaties with chiefs and kings. These treaties were signed either through deception or pressure, as European soldiers marched to the interior of Africa to plant flags, Administrators established stations to prove occupation. Borders that never existed, that were never meant to be, and sanctioned by African native cultural leaders that started to take shape. Entire societies, overnight, found themselves sliced apart or forcibly merged. Kingdoms were split between rival empires. Ethnic groups were divided across new borders, and communities with no shared history were thrown together under some foreign rule. In truth, the Berlin Conference was not the end of the scramble. It was the moment that turned the scramble into a coordinated, calculated partitioning of a vast and ancient African world, the turning point that set the stage for a full conquest that followed. Europe had drawn a new outline of a continent it did not know, did not understand, and had not asked its people to divide. Kingdoms, cultures, and nations that had grown over centuries were broken apart or pressed together by foreign hands.